Welcome back to the Training Model Podcast. Firstly, thank you very much for tuning back in. If it's your first time here, welcome. These are just, if you're viewing the video, actually, you'll see Chili running around the background here in my dungeon. But if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. This is kind of just a diary more than anything of just sort of what's going on in my world, both building Melbourne strength culture, and then also as I'm starting to now take action with some of the plans that I've set up for my education stuff through the training model website and the offers and all of that sort of stuff. So if you follow me on socials, you would have seen this week that we actually turned 8. Melbourne strength culture turned 8 on Wednesday, I think, maybe Tuesday, 1st of July, which is crazy to think that I've been building and just walking along this road for 8 years now. I never would have thought that it would have got to where it is. Not in like we're exactly where we want to be and all of that, but just like, it's crazy to just look back on and just think of like how I started this thing and sort of some of the key moments and the key things that actually have led us to where we're currently at. Nowhere near where I want to be, but definitely always trying our best to move in that direction and to take better actions and to continue to move forward. I guess that's the crux, is just like maybe not even move forward. It's kind of like just falling forward. It's kind of just like stumbling our way through, trying to make progress, trying to do things, trying to learn, trying to better execute. And that's been the same process that I've gone through since the start. And I feel like I'm still doing that, and I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. But yeah, if you've been here, no matter where you sort of jumped on in following us or being engaged with us, with your old client, current client, past student of something I've done, or just follow the content or whatever it is, like, I just want to say thank you for supporting myself, but ultimately supporting the brand of Melbourne strength culture through all of this, because like it's not possible without having people around and people that are interested and people that are willing to put their hand up for help from us, whatever that looks like. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody that has supported us throughout the process. So obviously I put up a Q&A this week for just questions around sort of 8 years of developing a gym and developing a brand here. And I got a couple of really good ones. Most people just wanted to know the things that I've fucked up, which is fair enough. Like, and believe me, there are so many fuck ups, and a lot of them I can't really talk about, but I'll definitely speak on a couple of the things, and hopefully my experiences and my lessons can help you not make the same fuck ups that I've made, whether you're a young coach or whether you're looking to start a gym or you currently got a gym or anything like that. I'm sure there's some wisdom in my errors, because there has been a lot of errors. But there was also a couple of good questions about things like, let me have a look here. I made some notes, like defining moments and defining things in our road. So a few things that we can chat about there. A lot of questions around, or when I say a lot, 2 people asked about like the initial investment back at like stage 1 of strength culture. So we'll chat about that a little bit. And then like things that I would do differently, and it's pretty cliche, but I don't think there's many things that I would do differently. There's definitely times where I've lost focus on what actually, the way I like to frame this is like what actually moves the needle forward, and what actually allows a business to make progress. And ultimately, when you discuss a business, it's making more money and generating higher amounts of profit. Like that is the end goal of a business. Like objectively, that's all that matters. Obviously, we want to have an impact and we want to provide value and all of that. But the outcome of doing that is increased revenue, increased profit. And I think over the years, I've definitely lost focus on what is actually important from a business perspective. And that ultimately leads to less revenue, less profit, more stress, more strain on the entire business and on myself personally, because I am an extension of the business, or the business is an extension of me, I guess. But definitely a few things there of things that I probably would have done differently, or just areas in the journey where I think I lost focus. So let's start with, let's just start with the initial investment, like what the process was and what the plan was initially. So I just finished. So I was 23 when I started the gym. And I had already done about 5 years of coaching. I started at 19, but I started my certs and all of that, and I started helping people at 18. And I'd worked as a personal trainer at a big gym, Recreation. If anyone's in Melbourne, they know what that is. And then also I didn't last long there. I just struggled there. I think I was young and I just didn't have the confidence in my ideas. And so like speaking to people and trying to help people was difficult for me because I wasn't confident that I could actually help them. And I think that's probably a common feeling for a lot of young coaches, and it's completely normal. I definitely felt that. And it meant that I didn't really do well in the big chain gym. I was lucky enough to get an opportunity at a smaller studio. There was 4 coaches there, and similar sort of setup to Strength Culture, I guess. 4 coaches. They were all sole traders renting the space, and myself one of them, as opposed to Strength Culture where everyone's employed and we all work for the business. But smaller community, which was good for me because it allowed me to actually build rapport with people and first provide value just by getting to know people and understanding what they're looking for and developing just better training habits and processes and developing technique and all of that. And over those years, it allowed me to start to develop my own confidence in my ability to help people. And that was great. And that's something that I do recommend a lot of young coaches. Like, just from my experience, I was just way better suited to a smaller community-based gym. And I would recommend that to a lot of young coaches. Like, try and find a smaller community-based gym where you can work from and develop yourself, because it's difficult in commercial gyms. I struggled. You get better leads, or supposedly you get better leads or more leads because they've got more members. But there's pros and cons to both. So that was just from my experience. But at the end of working with that smaller studio in Hampton, which was called Sweatmaster, it's still there. Lee Whitney was the owner, and I'm very thankful for the opportunities that he gave me. After like 3 or 4 years of working there, and my thirst for performance-based outcomes really started to take over. I had just been with Woodford and like interning at Woodford and spending a lot more time there. I just hired John Paul Kauke and started getting into powerlifting a little bit and started to really understand the performance aspect of training. And then ultimately I was doing university as well. So in that process, just helping more general clients with like weight loss goals and just general fitness and accountability and stuff. Like, I just started to feel a little bit of like a distance with that community because it was a little bit more just like general fitness, and I really liked the performance end of training. So eventually it just kind of felt like, all right, maybe it's time for me to move on. And ultimately I did do that, but it was in the transition of me attempting to become a strength and conditioning coach. I just worked with the VFL, and then I worked at the AFL. I got fired from the AFL. And then I got an internship at Cressy over in America in Boston, Cressy Sports Performance, which was the first defining moment in me being like, all right, I've seen what's capable, and I've told this story before, but I've seen what's capable out there with a well-built structure of Chili's scratching the door. Chili, come here. A well-built structure of like staff development and systems and processes, and ultimately a model of coaching and training that can be applied to everyone, and different people can employ or deploy the model, and the gym itself can be its own thing. And ultimately, when I saw that at Cressy, I was like, I need to build this in Melbourne for myself. And that's what started my journey to opening the gym. And I left Cressy, I went to iFast, spent some time with Bill Hartman and Mike Robertson, came back, and then that's when I was like, fuck it, I'm doing this. Spoke to mum and dad. Mum and dad are the most supportive people ever, and I'm so thankful for them and their support and help along the journey. And they were like, fuck it, do it, let's go. Dad was helping me find a place. Mum was helping me set up the business structures behind, speaking to accountants and all of that. And within a month of returning, it was actually 5 weeks, within 5 weeks of returning from the American trip, I opened Strength Culture. It all happened really, really quickly. And looking back at that scares the fuck out of me now. Now that I'm more mature and I understand like how big a risk that was, and I think that's the ultimate thing when people say like you've got to take risks. That was such a fucking risk for me to do looking back at it now, like right now, I don't have those balls anymore. Like I just don't. Maybe my test has dropped because I'm getting older or whatever, and I'm over that hump. I'm nearly 32 now, but I've had a kid, so I'm softening and all of that sort of stuff. But looking back, like that was such a risk for me to do. I'm so thankful that I took that risk, and I wouldn't recommend you take that risk if you wanted to get started with it. But I don't know, just back then I was just relentless in like, I want to build and set this thing up. So that's kind of like where I started the gym, and the initial investment was I had so when I went to Cressy, I had about 50 grand, and I had spent 15,000. It was close to 20,000 on that internship, that 6-month period in America. Obviously flying there, I was living there, I wasn't making any money, so I was just spending money. I was rent, bills, travel, like all of that sort of stuff was, and it ate into my savings by about 15 to 20 grand. I also had some shares in Domino's. I got a tip that Domino's was going to move into the Japanese market and to jump on a Domino's share, and I put 2.5 grand in Domino's, and it nearly tripled. I think I pulled out 7 in the end. So I've got like this running joke that like Domino's built strength culture, because I remember pulling those shares out and I was like, these are my investments, like this could make me rich or whatever. And I was like, but I need the money. And I pulled the money out of Domino's shares and used that initially. But I had about 35,000 of my own money. And then my parents loaned me 25,000, which was going to be interest free for the first 12 months. And then after that, I had to pay interest on the remaining amount. So my first goal was to pay my parents off, which I thankfully was able to do in the first 12 months, mainly because I just paid myself absolutely nothing. And I kind of paid myself absolutely nothing for probably the first 2.5 to 3 years. Like all of my wage was just reinvestment into the business. So I spent, let's say 55 to 60 grand in the initial setup, which when you look at the photos was fuck all. The flooring, obviously the lease and the bond and all of that sort of stuff, but there really wasn't much. Iron Edge just went under. For people that have been in the industry for a little while, Iron Edge went through that period where they went bust, and I knew that one of the main guys that used to work at the Iron Edge factory and worked for Iron Edge, and he was like, oh man, like I heard you're opening a gym, like come down and just pick whatever you want out of the gym and I'll just give you prices, or out of the factory I'll just give you prices, like we're going under and we need to get rid of everything. And I bought like the barbells, the bumper plates, a whole bunch of just random things. I bought a huge, massive box of chalk that we're still using, and I spent $50 on that box of chalk. Like, I guess I was just lucky in that sense that in that process, I had a network that helped me get things cheaper and all of that sort of stuff. But ultimately, like that timing was perfect because Iron Edge went under. I ravaged their warehouse and then opened up Strength Culture. And then Iron Edge eventually opened back up. And when we moved gyms, we almost got a sponsorship with Iron Edge, and they were going to build out our facility to be like almost like a showroom of Iron Edge products and stuff. But it never ended up working out in the end, which I'm kind of thankful for now. But that was just a little side piece there. But yeah, that was the initial investment. Didn't go very far. First 3 years, I invested pretty much my whole wage and any profit that the business was making back in. Started buying more equipment, buying more tech stuff for content and all of that. And I had that like investment strategy probably all the way up until around COVID. And then once COVID hit, I was like, all right, well, I think maybe now it's time to start to bring some of that money back into my personal life. Like ultimately, like I'm building this business and taking all this risk and developing staff and employing staff and putting myself out there and challenging myself. And ultimately, like I think it's time to now start to support myself and build my personal wealth. Not to say that I'm wealthy in any way, but I just started to change the priority of like, all right, it's time for this business to begin to support me financially as well. And then that was the process of moving the gym. I bought this warehouse as my first major investment, or this factory, whatever you want to call it. And then like now you see what you see as Melbourne Strength Culture 2.0, which is where we're at now, and the space and all of the things that are around here. So, and I've just recently started to get back into that idea of like, all right, now I need to start pumping a bit more money into the business again. And we want to grow, and we're kind of at this, we've been here for a few years now. Like we just can't break this ceiling of where we're at. it's been challenging for me. I know my personal sort of mental health is part of that process and those challenges that I've been feeling over the last couple of years. And I feel like I've broken out of that, speaking to psychologists, seeing a psychiatrist, getting diagnosed with ADHD and all of that, becoming a father. Like those key moments for myself, I would put as forks in the road for myself. But I feel like I've taken the right turns along that sort of struggles for myself personally over the last couple of years. And I think those benefits are going to start to play out moving forward. So that's kind of like the initial investment, I guess, and hopefully that might help some people understand sort of where I started and help you sort of inform your decisions to move forward if you're looking for a gym, to set up a gym or anything like that. But the biggest thing with that is like just start small, build from the ground up, build a community, impact that community. The community will grow, show your value, help as many people as you can, like network and meet people and put yourself out there a little bit, create content, because all of those little things help you in the journey to actually growing something that starts to resemble an actual business where other people think this guy knows what he's talking about. Where behind the walls, like I'm always just like fumbling around and fucking things up and making mistakes and all of that, which kind of brings me to my next thing, which is defining moments and some big mistakes that I may have made. I think a lot of when I view big mistakes, they're all financial things. The first big mistake that, and I recommend this to everyone, and this is why finance is one of my key modules in my Business 101 course, is that you have to understand finance. You have to understand finance at a personal level. Barefoot Investor is where I would recommend starting that. Understand how to budget for yourself. Understand your expenses. Understand your spending habits at a personal level. Do not start a business until you have your personal shit sorted. Because if you don't have your personal shit sorted, all of those bad habits bleed into your business. And then your business has actual financial problems. And I felt that. My first GST bill, I didn't even know what the fuck GST was. My first GST bill put me in a fucking hole for so long because I didn't understand it. I wasn't planned. I didn't understand tax. I didn't understand the difference between personal and sole trading tax implications versus company structures versus paying myself a wage versus just taking money out of the business versus profit margins and what profit tax is paid as opposed to personal marginal tax rates and all of that. Like, understand that shit. And it's not my place to teach you that. That is a journey you need to go through with a professional. Speak to an accountant, hire an accountant, work with an accountant in the same way you expect your clients to work with you. Tell them your goals. Tell them what you're struggling with to understand. Ask for resources. Ask for places to learn and better understand things and apply things. Before you make decisions to change something, speak to your accountant, because all of those things have real financial implications. And ultimately, I think that's all of my major mistakes have been money management. And I make less of them now. Now that the business is bigger though, smaller mistakes now have bigger implications because there's more revenue, there's more profits, there's more wages, there's more everything, there's more expenses, there's more reliance on the foundational life of the business from a financial perspective. So even though I'm making less mistakes, they are still as important as when I was starting. So, and that's why I always tell people, like, I'm starting out as a coach. What's the first thing I should learn? Money management. Before you learn anything else, learn how to manage money more than anything else. So all of my big mistakes have been financial. And then the flip side to that is like things that I think I've done well. I think the thing that I've done the best is my sole focus from a business progression has been around staff development. And I think that's why the boys have been with me for so long. And because I view the business as, so obviously I'm like the manager, the boss. I don't like that term boss, but I'm like the manager of the business. And then I have employees. And I'm also like, I'm speaking down to the boys in terms of like a hierarchical level, but I also put myself as an employee. So I have a hat that I wear that I'm like a CEO manager, but then I also have the hat that I wear that I'm an employee and I have to create value and all this. And I think that's part of the struggles that I felt in the last few years is I kind of lost that feeling of being an employee of the business. And I really stepped into like this CEO role or this management role. And I think that's hurt and created a lot of the problems that I've felt over the last couple of years because I kind of like removed myself for personal reasons, but I kind of like removed myself as an employee. And I think that's created a whole bunch of problems. So now I'm doing my best to step back in as an employee of the business as well. That's why I'm coaching again. That's why I'm back on the floor. That's why all of those decisions have ultimately been made for myself and my own roles in the business because I lost that for a couple of years, personal reasons again, but and I have felt the impact of that. So when I think of staff development, I think of, all right, this CEO hat that I have to wear and this management hat that I have to wear. As a manager, my life is easier when my employees are happy, they're productive, they want to work, they have good impact with their clients, and ultimately they're the client-facing, they're the customer-facing roles within the business. So if they're happy and they're healthy and all of that, it makes the whole business healthier and happier. And that's, I think, what has been my biggest focus for so many years with my staff, is to make sure that they're happy and to make sure that they feel like there's growth and there's direction and there's all of that sort of support. Because I think that is ultimately the success of a team-based business. Because it's small. We're a small business. Everyone knows everyone. Like it is a small business. So for me, that's always been the biggest factor, and that's, I think, the biggest success of what we've been able to do so far is based around that philosophy of like the team comes first, and if we can get that right, everything else will be easier and healthier and happier. So that's been a big thing, something that I think I've done well. The other thing that I think I've done well, but I wish I did more of, is actually just document more of the process. Whether it be just like little Instagram posts or whatever. Like for a few years there, I pretty much went MIA on Instagram, my personal thing. And I wish I just documented more. And I wish I spoke about my stories and my struggles more. I'm pretty open with my struggles, but I wish I did that more. I wish I kind of had a personal podcast throughout the process, not just like the first iteration was quantum lifting and then the second iteration was the Melbourne Strength Culture podcast, which is on a break right now. It will be back better than ever. We're going to take a longer break. There's way too much going on at the moment, but that will be back. But I wish I kind of had a personal podcast. The training model thing now is becoming that, which is mad, and I'm loving that. So that was one thing that I kind of wish, I think I did well, but I wish I did more of, is just documenting the process for myself, but also I think it just strengthens people's sort of like connection with myself at a personal level, but also the brand and the development of the brand. So that's one thing. But like, other than that, like, there's not really too much else that I wish I did differently. Like, all of the mistakes that I've made ultimately gave me really good lessons and learnings and all of that sort of stuff, which is great. Another thing that I have done well, and I would recommend for young coaches, is, for me, it's movement. And if you follow me on Instagram the last couple of weeks, I have been ranting and rambling about movement because I can't stop fucking thinking about it. I view something, just last night I was watching physics-based fucking YouTube videos in bed, trying to better understand force and applied stress on a system, and compressive and tensile forces and shear forces, and like, because I'm trying to nut all of these things in my head around movement, and I'm trying to piece this thing together, and ultimately I'm trying to strengthen my model and see where the mistakes or where the dark spots of my own movement model is, because now I really want to start educating around my model, and this is training model and the movement mentorship and all of that sort of stuff. But like, I have an unquenchable thirst for information around movement. I just can't, no matter how much more I learn, I just have more questions that I can't stop thinking about and I want to answer. Currently it's tension. And I'm trying to understand what the fuck tension is. And you're hearing me ramble, and I think I've got a lot of the big ideas around tension, depending on which model you want to use. Biomechanical model of like tension from a textbook, a muscle pulls on a bone, and it creates a concentric contraction and the sarcomeres close and all of that. Like, that's one view of tension, but there's this also more global view of tension, which is within a tensegrity-based model of human movement, and that is that there are tensile and compressive forces acting on the system. This is gravity, this is muscular tension, reactive tension, and all of that. Like, there's two ways you can view tension. At a microscopic level of what's happening in the sarcomere, but at a macro level of management of tension and the reactive tension of the tensegrity-based model of the human system. They're both true at once. They seem to oppose each other unless you have a zoomed out view. And that's my goal with my movement model, is to zoom out and actually understand what's going on. But I'm trying to understand it at a very physiological level, and I'm trying to understand it at a more global, macro, universal level as well. Because I think if I can understand both of those ideas, I can bridge the gap into application. Because I think both of those ideas are true, but the application is ultimately what matters for success for coaches. I digress. I have an insatiable thirst for movement and understanding movement. And one of the best things that I've done for my development as a coach and a brand is explore that in detail. I've initially explored it with content around powerlifting. Powerlifting now bores the absolute fuck out of me because I think it's just the most, it's like 1% of the entire understanding of not just human movement, but human performance is strength training. And that's ultimately what powerlifting is. Powerlifting is just strength training for squat, bench press, and deadlift. And it's very niched, and there's very particular ways in which you can do it, but it just no longer served my thirst anymore. And that's why I don't want to coach powerlifters personally. The gym still does, obviously, and it's going to be a key part of the gym because strength training is fucking awesome. But for myself, like, I have to remove myself from that because I need to better understand this global idea that I have in my head. And creating content around the things that I find interesting, I think has been the most success for myself across the board. With the success of my internships, with the success of my initial seminars, with the success of my initial coach development online processes, with the success of my overall training model and what I'm building out now, and now with the success of my movement mentorship and all of that. Like, my biggest successes at a personal level have come from the exploration of shit that I find interesting. I don't care about, especially like that evidence-based era. I don't give a fuck about all of these things. I just care about the shit that I'm interested in and how do these things apply to what I care about. And every time I've got sidetracked with thinking that I need to be someone else or present myself in a different way in order to get the acceptance of peers has been the worst part of my career. It's where I feel the most stress because I'm not being myself, my true authentic self. And I'm so thankful that I went through those struggles in the last 2 years because, especially working with the psychologist, a lot of it was like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you creating this business? Like, what is it within you that this business is supporting? And eventually, I thought about that shit for like 6 months. And eventually it was just like, I only care about human movement. As stupid as that sounds, that is the only thing I really give a fuck about. And I've built a business around all of that, which has been great. But all of the progression of the business has been for me to better understand human movement. I don't know why I am hell-bent on understanding it. And like, when I think about why I went to Cressy, it was because when I was 16, 17, 18, I used to just read Cressy blogs on anatomy. And it is still, I think, the best content out there around like functional anatomy is Eric Cressy's initial blogs, where he would take one muscle, and he always used like traps and stuff because he was a baseball thing. But he'd be like the low trap or the serratus or the mid trap or the upper trap or the bicep long head or whatever it might be. But it was always in the context for him around baseball and the pitching motion and the rehab process and the strengthening process and all of that. Like, my initial interest was just anatomy. That's all I gave a fuck about. And then when I went to uni, the only subjects I cared about was anatomy-based things. And then I started building content, and my initial content with strength culture was just anatomy-based application for strength training and powerlifting. And then I built a little bit of a name for myself in that, and I kind of got bored with it in the end. And then like And then I went back to America with Will Crozier. This was like the peak and the end point of my powerlifting coaching career. But I was coaching Will, and I wouldn't say coaching, but I was working with Will to better understand. We were just working together and to get him to the event in America. But then we laid on around that event in America where he did really well and we found a lot of success, and it was fucking mad. And one of my favorite things that I've ever done in my career. But what did we do when we went to America? We went and did a Zach Couples Human Matrix fucking course because I wanted to better understand what the fuck Zach Couples is on about when he's talking about these cylinders in the trunk and the position and concentric and eccentric orientation of muscles restricting and creating movement and all of this. And I wanted to better understand his. So we did a Zach Couples movement mentorship, Human Matrix. And then we went and did a Pat Davidson's Rethinking the Big Pattern thing in Arizona because I wanted to better understand how Pat Davidson got to his ideas around human movement. And there's still two people that I highly value their sort of thought process and stuff around, but I see holes in what they do for the application that matters to me, which is in the gym with just people that want to lift weights really well. And I really like the rehab stuff. But anyway, like, I don't even know how, I got here because I think the thing that I've done the best is I've just followed my interests. That's it. And I think young coaches, if you just follow your interests and explore your interests in detail and in depth and go as deep as you can in the shit that you find interesting, work becomes exciting because you're creating work for your own interest, like your own self-interest. You're creating processes and you're helping clients to better understand the shit that you find interesting. I hate the job when I'm doing things that I don't really care about. Like I just like nutrition and stuff. I just don't care. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't care about macronutrients and building a plate and using my hands as like a portion sizing, principle, precision nutrition and all of that. It's super valuable and it's worth exploring so you can educate your clients around. But for myself, all of those conversations are just like, I don't care about this. It just doesn't interest me. What interests me is like detailed, depth-based anatomy application for human movement in the gym. That is it. I don't care about plyometrics. I don't care about fucking sport. I don't care about any of that. It's just in the gym. When we're discussing what happens in the gym under load, how is the human moving and expressing force? And why is it doing the things it does? And why does everyone go to the same form breakdowns? Why are these things happening? And ultimately, this is my movement mentorship. So if you want to learn the shit that I've learned through 15 years of trying to better understand this thing, like the movement mentorship, intake 2 is open. We currently have a discount code, early bird discount code for 25% off, which is the code MODEL, MODEL, to save 25%. But the first intake's rolling and I'm loving it. But yeah, follow your interests as a coach because that is why you got to where you're currently at. And that is what's going to propel you the furthest and the highest moving forward, is just follow your interests. Follow the questions that you have, because everyone has specific interests. And it takes everybody's hell-bent, relentless pursuit of answering their own question. Everyone has their own specific question, but everybody working together pushes the industry forward. And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to do now. So, yeah, that would be the final thing. So I don't think there's anything else. What else is on my... That's it. Yeah. So yeah, that was a big rant at the end, but hopefully you're enjoying the content. I've been ranting on Instagram, which I've been enjoying, just yelling into the void. Definitely getting a few people ask questions and further making me think about things, which has been great. Also, if you want to learn more about my movement model, this is what I'm going to be hammering for the foreseeable future. I'm going to say the next 5 years of my life is building out my movement model and teaching people the way I view movement in the gym. If you want to learn more, jump on the YouTube channel, because all of those videos and everything that I build around that is going to be related to that. So if you're keen on more of that stuff, jump in there. And if you're really keen on getting stuck into the movement stuff, jump in the next intake for the movement mentorship, which will be starting in September. Just a little review of week 1. I loved it. It was fucking mad. I think this is the best structure of education that I've built so far. And when I say that, I created pre-learning modules. So there's one that I should have added, which is tension. I'm going to add it at the end of week 3 to start the second half of the mentorship with this first intake. But I should have added tension to that and how I view tension and what I'm thinking about when we discuss tension. But the pre-learning modules, I think, so one of the things that I always thought about with my education was that, because for some reason, I always get like entry-level people. I don't know why this is, but I always get like very entry-level people, like people that haven't even finished their certs. I don't even know how they've got onto me. Obviously, someone's just recommended they follow me or whatever. But quite often when I do these things, I ask like, oh, where's everyone? And they're like, oh, I'm just finishing my certs. I'm like, wow, you are in a detailed fucking rabbit hole to just be finishing your certs, but let's go. And I want to make sure that I don't lose those people. And then I get really detailed people, and I've been discussing with a couple of guys in this current intake who have done fucking DNS continued education, that have done FRC continued education, that have done PRI, that have done SFMA, that have gone through university, that have learnt all of these models and stuff. And they're coming to me to help better piece those things together. And I really want to make sure, and I think I'm starting to really create the product that does it. But I really want to make sure that I elevate those new people up to a level without indoctrinating them with my personal biases. And that's a key focus for me, is that for new people, I don't want them to come to me, drink my Kool-Aid, and then forget about everything else. Like that is the worst thing that I could create from my education process. What I want people, especially these newer people, to do is to jump in, learn the ideas that I have been exposed to and the applications that I have been exposed to, and ultimately the dot connecting that I have been able to do. Learn all of those processes, but then that actually does the opposite of blocking everyone else out, and it actually opens their eyes to how much good information there is out there. Like that is my end goal. It's like a sub goal for my movement mentorship, is for at the end of it, everybody that goes through it can observe all of these other people for the value that they have within their own kind of silos of interests. And the classic one that I always go to is David Gray. Like, David Gray is amazing. I actually think he's the gold standard of application of true biomechanical understanding. I think he's the world's best person at it. However, new coaches observing David Gray, unless they go and do his continued education stuff and his portal and all of that, and unless they go and like piece a lot of the stuff together until he creates his own model product, which I'm sure he will at some point. He'll do a mentorship that is everything that he knows and all of the processes and how he got to his current understanding. At some point, he'll do that. And it will be the biggest fucking thing that this industry has ever seen. It will dwarf anything else, because I do believe that he is the gold standard for application of these ideas. But young coaches go in and they observe him on Instagram, they get lost and they're like, oh, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, I want people to come to me, learn the overall global view that I think I have pretty darn well in my head, and I'm starting to piece it together in a product, so that then when they go and observe a David Gray, they can get the most value out of what he's producing and the content he's making and his products and his programs, because they have a better foundation of the global concepts that underpin a lot of these well-built, well-applied models in the space. Another one would be a Pat Davidson. Like James George, I told him to start reading Pat Davidson's book, and he's been doing it, but he's like, man, I've just got more questions. Like, it's all going over my head. I'm like, well, there's foundational things there that haven't been well enough explained or whatever. And it's probably not, Pat probably doesn't care. He's got a PhD in physiology and all of that. He's doing his own thing and following his own interests. But I think there's pieces underneath his amazing model and his amazing ideas that a lot of young coaches, if they understood, they'd get even more out of learning from a Pat Davidson and doing his courses and all of that. Like, that's what I kind of want to produce. So it's not so much just like lifting young coaches up and then closing off other ideas. I want to lift young coaches up and open their senses to how much good information is out there. And I just use David Gray and Pat Davidson as like two individual people there, but they are fantastic fucking people. but there's layers of just general understanding. And Bill Hartman would be another one. Like, you go and observe a Bill Hartman thing and you just get fucking lost straight away. I got lost for 12 months until I was like, all right, I need to go and learn what the fuck a tensegrity model is. What the hell is this? And all of a sudden I learned what tensegrity is, and then all of a sudden Bill's model makes significantly more sense because I understand this foundational sort of platform that he's building his idea off. Same with like a David Weck. People follow David Weck and think this guy is crazy. He's not. He's so fucking intelligent. He's just speaking at a frequency that the general person does not understand. So they label him as crazy. But he ain't crazy. He has got ideas in his head around these rotational things that happen. The rotation that happens through the foot as it contacts the ground and produces force. His head over foot analogy is just like a center of mass idea of like loading and tensioning one side of the body, bringing everything over to that foot. The spiral idea. You come to a functional patterns idea. People view functional patterns because they are dogmatic and they fucking promote the shit like idiots. But functional patterns, there's gold in there somewhere. I'm telling you, there has to be, because it wouldn't have created the amazing outcomes and the size of the business is unless there was gold in there. But if you understand tensegrity-based models, all of a sudden you start viewing functional patterns, and what are they talking about? They're talking about everything happening in a rotation. There's no specific planes of motion. They're talking about the speed and the dynamicity of human movement. These are all tensegrity-based ideas. And all of a sudden, I can view functional patterns as dogmatic and fear-mongering and nocebic, because it is, and the way they promote it is, and I'll die on that hill. But there are principles of movement that they promote and talk about that have incredible application if you understand it enough. Same with an anatomy trains. Somehow I got on my YouTube just recommended me a Thomas Myers video talking about the fascial slings with respect to tension, probably algorithm doing its thing. But all of a sudden, like I'm observing, I've never been exposed to Thomas Myers before. And I understand the trains of fascial slings and these like oblique trains. And the muscle doc often talks about like the lat and the contralateral glute connection through the thoracolumbar fascia. Like he's talking about an anatomy train just within his lens and within his process of understanding and application. But I've never been exposed to a Thomas Myers. That was the first video I've ever watched of him. A new coach going there would have been like, this guy's talking shit and whatever. But when I'm observing the Thomas Myers thing, I'm seeing so many dots connected around, all right, well, fascial tension is part of this idea of the dynamicity of movement, loading the system with both potential energy and active energy within the muscular system. Another one is Jake Tura just posted about tendons. And he said tendons lengthen before the muscular system because tendons are stiffer than the muscular system. If you don't understand tensegrity-based modeling and velocity impacting the tissues and deformation and all of these sort of things, Pat Davidson talks about deformation a lot. He made a post the other day about the spring idea within within tension of a muscle, there's parallel tension that's created and parallel eccentric tension, and this is all controlled within the elastic properties of the muscle. And then there's series tension, which is happening within the muscle cell itself. And this is the whole idea of like sarcomere sort of proliferation or like hypertrophy of sarcomeres and the development of more muscle tissue. It can happen in series or it can happen in parallel. He's discussing it from the elastic properties of the muscle and talking about how to compress a foot and where the ground contact should be. But if you zoom out, they're talking about very particular ideas around how the system manage forces, the speed of the force, the direction of the force, and all of that. There's principle-based things underneath all of that. So I don't know. Yeah, like I think, and it's my end goal is to bring coaches to a level where they can observe all of these models. Some of them I love a lot, some of them I don't love a lot, functional patterns, but get the most out of when they go to learn those things. So I don't know, that was a huge rant. Thank you for 8 years. I'm looking forward to the next 8 years. Please jump in the movement mentorship if you want to better understand this shit, because I know I can help you no matter where you are currently. And yeah, thank you to everybody that has been part of the journey so far. I'm back. I feel back. I know a lot of people, I'm getting the responses like it's so good to see that I'm fucking passionate again, because I honestly lost that passion for a few years there. But follow your interests. Fucking let's go. To the moon.